week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim. Shinichi's battle with his humanity finally comes to a climax. Tamura Reiko meets a bloody end, and the series finally decides to follow up on that serial killer from the very first episode. Also guys, before you watch my review, make sure to check out episode 3 of the Powerful Nerdcast. It's in the description box below! Shameless plugins are done, it's time for shameless reviews. This week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim was a yin-yang type of episode, where the first half was an emotional tearjerker, and the second half was plain just disturbing. But before we get to the second half, let's talk about the end of Tamura Reiko. This opening scene was really intense, really well done, and honestly drew the tears from my eyes, especially in that final scene where she's walking towards Shinichi, blood-soaked, deciding to hand her child to him. And this scene is really important because this is finally when Shinichi gains back his humanity, his emotions, when he can finally cry again, and when he finally does shed tears. It's just heartbreaking. That combined with the overall imagery of the snow and the closing theme just make this one of the most emotional, gripping scenes of the entire series. That proves this series has a good story to tell, and it's not just all about the disturbing and ridiculous action scenes. What's really messed up about this scene is how the detectives just come in and completely unload on Tamura Reiko. It's messed up. Do they not realize that she is holding a child in her arms? And maybe they don't even believe that the baby itself is an actual human. Maybe they do by the end, especially the way she protects it with her hair. Otherwise, it's a really creepy scene, and basically everything sort of comes full circle here. I especially loved the scene when she actually transformed her face into Shinichi's mother. This was sort of his opportunity to see her again, and it might come across as creepy, but when I saw it, it came across as very emotional. This was basically Tamura's chance to finally come close to Shinichi and be real with him for a second and actually get his attention. It's just heartbreaking, even more, because Satomi happens to arrive just when this happens and sees Shinichi crying for the very first time in a long period. So it's just a really well done, handled scene. The end of Tamura Reiko is insane, and just the fact that she apparently created Goto, that's insane. She had a hand in doing a lot of things in that organization. But the second half of the episode, this is where things really start to get interesting, because they're following up on a scene from the very first episode, which they never even addressed after that. It was that one scene where you see that serial killer who is killing that woman, stabbing her with a knife, and laughing maniacally into the sky, when suddenly, I think he notices a parasite or something like that. And this guy is not a parasite himself, or at least I don't think he is. But he happens to be a cannibalistic serial killer who has a disgusting and just disturbing personality altogether. And he's like a psychic, kind of like Kana. He can actually sense the parasites. So what the detectives do is they have him in this room wearing these headphones, and they bring in these people, which includes Shinichi eventually, and he's having to decide if they're actually psychic or if they're even parasites. And some people he believes are fake. When this woman comes in, he literally jumps up, rips his pants off, and starts spanking it right there. Yeah, that happened in this week's episode. But it's at the very end of the episode where things really start to get interesting, when suddenly Shinichi walks in, and at first he seems almost bored by him, and then that's when he realizes something's not quite right, and he asks the detectives to make Shinichi look him directly in the eyes. And obviously that's because whenever these like weird psychics or like espers and parasites look each other directly in the eye, they can like sense something directly, and he just looks so creepy at the end when he is staring down Shinichi. And even Shinichi, you can see in his eyes, just the way he's animated at the end, he's like, oh shit, I am screwed. This guy's totally about to call me out. So I really can't wait to see what this character's all about, because he's a total wild card, and the prospect of him not being a parasite and him being human, and there actually being a villain in the series who's very dangerous who's human, amongst all the monsters, is insane. Just nuts right there. So what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim, I thought this was a really good episode. Some folks might not be too pleased with the pacing of the episode. Frankly, I think it was done really well. A lot of people were saying they could have ended the Tamura Reiko story in last week's episode, but I just really loved it here. I loved the entire setting of it, how it was done with the snow setting. Everything just looked really beautiful and yet disturbing at the same time, especially with all the creepy gunshots. And now when she died, she just like melted away and turned into a freaky mummy. That was disturbing. I also got a real big tearjerker scene when she was actually handing the baby over to Shinichi, and you could see that her baby was actually still trying to hold on to her as it was being taken away. It was so sad. Just, it It really drew the tears from my eyes. I'm not even joking. It really is a testament to the writing of this series, and it's just really cool to see Shinichi finally, put his whole death of his mother thing to rest. Obviously, he's still going to have to talk to Satomi about that eventually, but I can't imagine that's probably going to happen until the end of the series. But the biggest surprise is Uragami. This guy is insane. He's crazy. He's disgusting. And he might feel that maybe if he's working with the cops, he'll be able to get out of this sticky situation. To me, he kind of reminds me of like an even more extreme and just disgusting version of Hannibal Lecter working with the police. He's definitely not as smart as them, and he's much more crass. But I think that makes him a pretty entertaining character altogether, especially with the whole spanking it scene. Otherwise, the end of the episode was just very intense with him staring down Shinichi. Can't wait to see where that's going. And like I said, I'm really excited about the prospect of a human villain fighting alongside the monsters. I think that's going to be really cool. And there's still Goto to look out for. There's tons of other stuff in this series, and we're getting closer and closer to the conclusion, so I'm excited. I really like this episode a lot. Despite the fact that the pacing might have been a little slow in the beginning, they could have speeded things up a little bit, maybe a little less recapping. I still think this was a fantastic episode of the series, which if you've been following, I really think you're going to get something out of it. And just the fact that they're finally following up on that one character from the first episode, that was one hell of a tease for that character. I really can't wait to see where this is going. And I kind of liked them to go back to that situation because he wasn't caught and he wasn't with the police at that time, so he was just running around free doing his own thing. I imagine we're probably going to get some flashbacks for that soon, but there it is. This week's episode had some great artwork, pretty decent animation, but nothing really bombastic. It's not really that type of episode, but it was handled really well. The music cues were great, especially the use of the ending theme, which I think fit really well with that scene and just made it all the more emotional. So, great episode. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. I really liked it, and you should definitely check it out if you've been following Parasyte the Maxim or if you've read the manga version. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked it, hit the like button. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim. What did you think about the conclusion of Tamura Reiko's story and Shinichi getting his emotions back? And what's up with this Uragami guy? What do you think of him? And what do you want to see from the rest of Parasyte the Maxim? If you guys have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on this little button right up here. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. And you should also check out our brand new podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast. We just released episode 3. It's a really cool video podcast. Check it out. We talk about a lot of really cool things like bronies and Jurassic World. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be a new weekly show. Thank you guys again for watching. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.